Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from whichever part you're joining in the world today. Welcome back to the second day of Big Data Days 2022, and I'm absolutely thrilled to see you again in such great numbers in the sessions today. Before we get started with introducing our next speaker for day number 2, let me introduce a couple of the key logistics for the people who have just joined. Big Data Days is an event that will feature 30 speakers from across the globe that will talk about how big data analytics, machine learning, and AI are changing the way that we live. Approximately half of the speakers was presenting their sessions yesterday. And today we have a full program again of the remaining 16 speakers that in 8 sessions of two tracks at the same time will be presenting on their various different topics. Before I welcome our first speaker today, let me just say a word of appreciation towards our partners and sponsors, without whom this event would definitely not be possible. I would like to personally thank AWS, Quint, HighLogic, Cybient, and Advisors for being true and loyal sponsors again for the event this year. We're also working with a number of industry partners for featuring this event. The big data community that engages their members, the publisher Koban page, which will make books available, certification body APMG International, and our strategic partner for this event, the Multi-Development and Economic Corporation, MDEC, which is based in Malaysia. Thanks so much for being part of our event yet again. I would also, once again, like to make people familiar that Koban page is having a special offer for everyone who's with us in these 2 days. With the discount code BIGDATA25, you will get a 20% discount on all big data books on their website for these 2 days only. So thank you so much, Koban page, for providing us with this opportunity. Another brief note is that this year's event will also be available on the mobile app. So in case you're on the go or cannot log into sessions live behind the desktop, you can also join the event on the mobile application. Take a moment to download that and you can follow all of the sessions along there as well. That's a first feature for this year. In case you missed any sessions from yesterday, all of the recordings are being uploaded on the main website. I have seen that our team has already uploaded most of the recordings from yesterday, and this is a work in progress. We'll try to have everything finished within the next few days. So in case you have missed a session, you can review all of the sessions right here. Good. Today's tracks are going to be hosted again by myself. My name is Jan Willem Middelburg, and I'll be your host for the business track today. And the technical track will be hosted by my colleague Jeremy Chia. In order to engage and get as much out of this conference as possible, I strongly encourage you to ask questions on the right-hand side of this screen. We will moderate questions towards the end of each session, and through the upvote and downvote sessions, you can indicate which sessions you would like to have answered by your speakers. By default, everyone is on mute, so if you would like to ask a question in person, please let us know so we can unmute your mic as well. Have a lot of fun during Big Data Days. If you want to engage with social media, please use the hashtag Big Data Days so we can track what is happening, or I should say Big Data Days 2022 for this year. And please share your knowledge and learn as much as possible. Having said that, I quickly want to go towards our first session for today, and I would like to introduce our first speaker. Our first speaker is Mr. Rohan Persaud, who is going to be presenting from Australia. Rohan has close to 25 years of experience in the field of business intelligence, reporting, and analytics. And he has had a vast career at Cognos, IBM, and now Sisense. Rohan has helped businesses focus on achieving better results through technology, and he has a background in organizational development. It's the first time that Mr. Rohan is presenting with us today during Big Data Days, so I would like to extend a very warm welcome to Mr. Rohan. Rohan, if you can unmute yourself and turn your camera on, and then we can welcome you towards the session.
Great. Thanks, John. Well, it's great to be here, everybody. Yes, greetings from Australia. Let me just get the presentation up here. And away we go. All right. I think everybody can see it now.
It is starting to show. Yeah, it's there.
There we go. Great. Well, listen, team, I'm going to go on for about 30 minutes and leave about 10, 15 minutes really to chat at the end. So as you have questions, please feel free to put them into the chat room. I've got two of my colleagues, Marcus and Mira, who will also pick them up, make sure that nothing gets dropped, nothing gets lost, right? So my name is Rohan. Thank you very much for joining this session. I help look after SciSense here in Asia Pacific and Japan. SciSense is a next generation analytics platform. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on. But the real focus of what we want to discuss today is about monetizing your data, right? It's monetizing your data and also unlocking value, right? They're two slightly different things, two sides of the same coin, perhaps. And it's something that we get asked quite a bit, right? As we join conferences and as we're presenting, we get asked, we've got this data. How do we monetize it? What do we do with it? We've undergone the last 2 years. We've been busy trying to come up and look at new models to help our organizations adapt with this ever-changing environment. We've seen some organizations barely survive the past 2 years, and we've seen some organizations absolutely thrive, right? But they still bring different problems. So the past 24 months, we've seen, and as we've discussed with CDOs and data leaders and CIOs, we've been asking them and our clients as well, what are the lessons that we've learned, right? We've had, here in Australia, as with the rest of the world, we've had COVID, but we've also been hit with bushfires and, biblical floods. We've had mice plagues, believe it or not. We've had a lot of trade unease with our partners and neighboring countries, and we've got the situation in Ukraine. And none of these were anticipated, right? And if you go back, to 2007, 2008 with the GFC, that wasn't anticipated. And you go back to year 2000 with the last recession, that wasn't anticipated. And, it brings the question of what are we learning, right? When we come out of these situations, are we going to reinvent ourselves, or are we just going to resume business as usual? And I think it's a really important question. We just conducted, SciSense conducted a survey in Asia Pacific. We had about 1,200 respondents back about the future of data, and I put my email address in the chat. So if you want a copy of that, we're more than happy to send that to you as well. And that talks about how to future-proof and perhaps take a look at how you want to reinvent yourself. But the two big lessons that our customers and our partners have told us are, the first thing, it's accelerated the whole digital transformation story, right? It's driven virtualization of processes and practices and policies and procedures. Everybody's working from home, right? There's less face-to-face relationships. The new focus is being effective through online collaboration, right? It's accelerated that digital transformation, and that's the new norm, right? But we've been talking about digital transformation for 25, 30 years, right? Since we had the internet and we've got lots of data, we've been talking about digital transformation. The issue has been that, and it's not necessarily new, but we've been doing it at our own pace. We thought we had time, right? To each according to their own, right? We were thinking, okay, we understand this. We think we have a good handle on it, but not anymore, right? Unexpected, unanticipated events are driving technological changes, right? It's driving that digital transformation that we see within organizations. And then the second big finding that we've had is that it's been a pressure test on our systems, right? Technology is supposed to be an enabler, make our life easier. But the past 24 months, we've seen systems straining and breaking. We're identifying weaknesses within our organizations. I talk a lot about future-proofing organizations and using analytics to future-proof your organization. And the first step, and I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent here, is really looking and taking an inventory of what you have and what you're using. And a lot of people think, well, if it's not broken, I'm getting these outcomes, and outcomes is a key component, a key theme of this presentation, right? And everything we do has to have and be done for the right outcomes. But take stock of what you have, right? Because at the end of the day, We've got a level of comfort. We embrace things like Excel. Excel is not going away. We've had it for 25, 30 years. We still have these replace Excel campaigns, and people talk about what they could do if they moved away from Excel, but just a comfort level. But we all understand as data professionals, we've got to take a look at how to do things better, faster, um, more efficiently. As I mentioned, some organizations thrived within the past 24 months, right? So when you take a look at organizations like Zoom, 10,000% increase in viewers, as you would imagine. But how do you manage that growth? They're an online solution, and yet are they using Excel in the background? Are they using legacy systems? Are they doing things manually? So imagine that growth can also be a big issue, right? Online gaming went through the roof. If you're a Blizzard or some of these large organizations, how do you increase your bandwidth to make sure your customers are getting that experience that they're expecting? In Australia, we have two large retail, food chains, Coles and Woolies, Woolworths, and it was digital sales. Digital sales was fantastic as a business unit. But how do you manage that growth? Because managing that growth can be just as difficult as those organizations have had a tough time. And I think we all understand the organizations that have sort of struggled. You have travel, you have transportation, you have retail, you have universities, and universities, they get all their funding or a lot of their funding from foreign students. When borders are closed, that doesn't happen, right? And I was working with a large global leasing company about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, when COVID just hit, and they were doing cash flow planning on a quarterly basis, and then they're doing it on a monthly basis, and then they're doing it on a daily basis, and they're using Excel, and the 4 people on the team were just at the point of burnout, right? And they lost significant market share, and there are lots of problems. And at the end of it, they were looking at just going back to Excel, and no lessons learned. So at the end of the day, organizations need to look at new business models, right? And so they're being asked questions that they've never had to ask before, right? And where do they find the answers to those questions? It's in the data, right? So unlocking the inherent and intrinsic value of data, and even being able to monetize it, has never been so critical and never been as important as it is today, right? And somebody pinged me the other day and said, okay, well, you talk about asking questions that never been asked before. That sounds kind of vague. Each industry is different, but I was talking to a chancellor of a university, and they said the biggest question that they had to answer in the past 2 years was, where are our students? Are they here on campus? Did they go back home? Did they go overseas? For government funding, et cetera, for planning purposes? Where are the students? They had to go into the data, and they weren't structured to do that. So again, the inherent value of data is there, right? So we're going to get into talking about how you can extract that data. But I think if we pivot just slightly and talk about, and we all understand the key element, right? So it's data-driven organizations outperform competitors. We all get that. That's been around for a long time as well. That's like motherhood. It's all about how you take data, turn it into information, information into insights, insights into action, action to drive outcomes, right? Everything has to be outcome based. So I like this chart. Gartner said, they did a big study last year, the year before, and they said, 60% of all organizations are going to continue to invest in analytics. It's going to be, a multi-billion-dollar market. We're talking, the tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars in the next 5 years. Organizations are throwing money into analytics, trying to get those insights, right? Again, data, information, insights, insights into action. But, 80%, when they looked at 80% of those projects had less than the optimal return on investment. And so if you're going into your C-level or your board saying, hey, we need more money to do some analytics, and they're saying, well, geez, didn't we just give you a pocket full of money a little while ago? What are you doing with it? What's happening with this investment? It should be, we all understand that data-driven organizations should do better. We're data rich, but what's going on here? And then as Gartner dug down, they realized that, hey, only 30% of an organization are using analytics. 70% aren't. I mean, if you had anything to take away, it's that this concept that people are spending money, they're not getting the ROI, and people are not leveraging analytics within an organization. And why? It's not necessarily the tech stack. It's not necessarily the skills. It's not the data literacy of users. It comes down to 2 things. One is dashboards are seen as less relevant in today's day and age. right? I even saw some, a paper that said dashboards are dead. They're not dead. They're going to be just like Excel will be, using them for time and time and time. But are we getting the right answers? Right? What's this data telling me? How can we actually drive insights? I mean, drive actions. I mean, is this actionable data, right? And not everybody is getting the experience that they expect as a user. Now, in our personal lives, everybody here is, and humans in general are huge consumers and early adopters of emerging technology. You don't need to know what AI and ML and NLQ and the whole alphabet soup of emerging technology acronyms stands for, as long as you're getting the benefit out of it. And let me use the example of Netflix. You come home, you turn on Netflix, and it says, "Hey, we've got 4 or 5 programs that you might be interested in watching." Okay, right there. At the point of decision making, you're going to decide to do something. This data is coming to you, and you don't care what sort of predictive algorithms are using or what sort of AI is in the background. All you know is it's personalized, it's contextualized, it's delivered to you. Right? It's insights being delivered at the point of decision making. And it's the question we get asked is, why can't we have that in our business lives, right? And the answer is you can, right? So, businesses aren't always the early adopters of technology, but when you look at how you want to unlock value and drive monetization of your data, you have to understand what's out there. And a lot of organizations again get caught up with the comfort level. We've got something that's adequate, and they're not paying attention to what the market's doing. Now, I come from this old generation one uh, type family, right? It was Cognos, it was business objects, it was clients, it was client server technology, and even mainframe back then. You know, into IT departments, and we'd work with them, create a solution. It's all about reporting primarily, and then the business would come down and say, "Hey, we've got something we want to generate. We've got some reports we want to generate. Can you do it for us?" And it might be a month, it might be 2 months, but you get your reports and you're ecstatic because you had insight into your business, and it was the best at the time, right? This is at the start when cloud was just starting and the internet was just starting, so you had insights into your business. Then you look at the generation two, when you had market consolidation around 2005. And it's all about desktop data democratization, right? All these key phrases. Everybody gets a dashboard, it's visualizations. You can take a look at your data and pull out the insights from that, and will help you do that. And it made the first generation less relevant. Then you look at where we are today with the next generation platforms, and there's a bunch out there. There are a few out there. And it's all about being born on the cloud. It's not taking desktop technology and trying to, revamp it and force fit it into a cloud application, port it over, with all sorts of, porting technologies. This is born on the cloud with AI, ML, NLQ, predictive, and advanced analytics built in out of the box, being able to contextualize, personalize, and deliver you the analytics at the point of decision making. It's unlocking value, going beyond dashboards. It's that Netflix type of experience. Gartner just released a report, I think it was yesterday or today, about the augmented analytics, which is about infusion, which we'll get to in a little while. The next 3 to 5 years is all about augmented analytics. It's getting away from dashboards. Dashboards are fine, but how do you increase that adoption of analytics within your organization? That's key. So let's sort of talk about, the value of data, and then we'll get into the monetization. We talk about data being the new oil, right? And this is actually the cover off The Economist. I think it was from 2017. But when I was at IBM, we were using that analogy. 2008, 2009. You've got to mine it, you got to refine it, you got to ship it, you got to distribute it, you got to get it to your consumers so they can, drive their business, right? And that analogy was apt at the time. But data is dynamic, right? And when we talk about data, we talk about the 4 V's. And I'm not sure if I gave you guys a bit of time to sit down and sort of, work out what are the 4 V's of data. The first one's velocity, the speed of data, which is increasing on a rapid basis, right? So we're seeing that whole velocity of data and being able to manage that. The veracity of data, so the truth, just as velocity increases, veracity sometimes takes a couple of steps backwards. right? So you're not knowing what is the trustworthy data, what is it that we can use within our systems to get the right results. Third one's volume. It's never been cheaper to store data, right? So the volume of data that's out there. So how do you sift through that data to find the right data that you can use, meaningful data? Again, data into information, information into insights, insights into action. Very, very important. And then the variety of data, right? Structured and unstructured. And so when you think about it, those are the four, and then we talk about value of data, right? Um, it's important to think of data as a resource. Yes, I think that's true. We talk to a lot of CPOs and CDOs, um, and they go into their board, and the board says, "Hey, we're data rich. Look at this, we're data rich. We've got lots of data, right? We've been around, we've survived, this digital disruptors that are all around us, and we've got data. We've got years and years of data. We're data rich, Mr. CDO, Chief Data Officer. What are you going to do with this? Right now, we're going to task you, and we're going to put into your KPIs all sorts of metrics around either monetizing this or creating value." And that whole concept of data being, or us being data rich and stockpiling it, is misleading, because there's no value of data unless you do something with it. I think that's really the basic concept, right? With the oil analogy, it needs to be updated a bit, right? I think, do you have the modern infrastructure to handle the new data? And I talk about new data. It's not the same data that we had 10 years ago. It's not the same data we're going to have in 5 years or 10 years, right? And the second thing is, are you getting it to your consumers quickly, right? It has a shelf life. It's a consumable. It's a perishable. Time to insights is absolutely critical. It goes stale. There's lesser value to an organization or to a customer or to a stakeholder if that data is not timely. But people will pay for insights. They value insights. So it comes down to monetization, right? So that's where we talk about monetization and value, two different things, right? And so people ask us, how do you monetize data? All right, well, there's a couple of ways. And I'll just give you just three or four very simple ways. The first two are historical patterns. It's been done for many, many years, and you should be familiar with it. And the last two are the ways that we're coaching and working with our customers, and we're seeing great success within their organizations. The first one is really, you can sell it, right? You can collect it, you can collate it, you can cleanse it, you can sell it, right? It's, buy it for a dime, buy it for a nickel, sell it for a dime sort of story, right? People have been doing this for a long time. Bloomberg does this, Reuters does this. Hotels will sell data that's been cleansed around nationality, age, and gender to other organizations who can use that to drive their business and promotions, right? So it's really about taking data, just data sets, and selling it, right? That's an obvious way of monetizing data. The second way is really around solutionizing it. It's providing data and analytics through an application or a solution, a software solution. It's like the OEM story. And we've been doing this for, 20, 30 years as well. Include you have the data, you create a package of reports or dashboards, and you sell that as a standalone solution to other organizations that they can use and bring in their data or bring in data sets. So again, the difference between the first one is just data, raw data packages, and the second one is an OEM or a solution that you can sell as a standalone package, right? People have been doing that for a long time. And then you look at the whole embedded concept. And this is where it gets really interesting. This is what we talk about augmented analytics in the next 5 years. When you embed it into your platform, into your portal, into your solution, right? It's providing insights to your stakeholders, your customers, your suppliers, your partners, your agents, right? Any of the downstream or upstream clients that you have, because everybody wants their own customizable experience about their own book of business with you, right? You are providing that single source of truth to these clients. And yet they want to come in and they want to explore their own data. They want to have that experience so they can, drill down and use NLQ and answer questions and find insights within that platform. Give you an example. It's important. Where you have an insurance company, I'm working with an insurance company in ASEAN, and they have quite a few agents. And for years, it's been using Excel spreadsheets and emails and sending out any information related to those agents about the organization, right? So it could be compensation, it could be incentives, it could be performance, could just be basic information, right? And that's one thing. They control that information. They're sending it out to their agents. By embedding the analytics into their platform and allowing the agents to come to them, they're controlling it's a single source of truth, which is fantastic. But these agents can come in and they can take a look at their own data, benchmark themselves against everybody else's performance, benchmark how they're doing against or their commissions, see what's available to them. And again, they can just drill down and they can do the analytics right there and then. And the way you monetize that is you can have a freemium version. And a lot of our clients, a lot of people we work with have a freemium version. People can come in, there's a certain level of analytics that they're looking for. And then there's also the premium version where people want to pay for additional insights, right? So again, you have, and we're seeing this happen more in the brick and mortar organizations that were traditional and quite large. And they're saying, okay, we've had these digital disruptors, we've had these ISVs and software companies come and work on solutionizing and OEMing type of products. But we've got data, we've got years and years of data. So here's how we're going to use it. And we can make some money off that as well, right? We can provide insights, people pay for insights. When you look at the fourth one, which is really around infusing analytics, and a lot of people say infusing analytics, yeah, that's the new concept, and it is, but this is where the whole market is going within the next 3 to 5 years, right? It's going beyond dashboards. It's taking the insights from a dashboard, perhaps, and bring it to the point of decision making. That's where the value is. And this might be less of monetization and more of unlocking value. But when you talk about unlocking value, it's really aligned to your strategy, right? Which is generating revenue, enhancing customer satisfaction, and cutting costs. And let me give you a couple of examples. So infusing within work applications and work streams. We work with a marketing company, and they live in Slack, and they live within Google Sheets, right? They don't go out, and again, coming out of an application and having to go to a dashboard, and then going out of the dashboard, going back to the application and trying to extrapolate data and make sense of what. In Slack, they get a message that says, hey, your drone campaign has less than optimal performance. It's not meeting the KPIs that you set. This is a red alert. Now, setting an alert is not difficult. Doing webhooks is not difficult. The concept is the insights from the dashboard are coming to the point in your work applications. You don't have to leave it. There it is. Okay. And the key thing is what to do with it. Again, data into information, information to insight, insight into action. So here's your insight. Your insight is, hey, your drone campaign isn't doing well. The action is right there in that Slack message. Hey, button A, do you want to pause the Google ad campaign? So through APIs, you push a button, goes off and it pauses that campaign. Push another button, set up a meeting with the key people. And again, it's already being predetermined who's important, who needs to be in this. And again, it goes in the calendar. It does that right there. You're not leaving anything. The next one might be, okay, create a deck, push a button, and then from your dashboard, all the relevant data points and charts will be pulled out, put into PowerPoint or whatever your flavor of presentation with all the insights beside it. This chart tells you here's the 10 most relevant points. That's a good example of infusing insights into your work application. So getting away from dashboards and being able to act upon it. Another quick one, because this is probably Infused as something new for a lot of people. When again, a large retail organization, and they had 5 people used to go into work, and they used to just live in Excel, and they would get a refresh every, I think, 2 to 3 hours, a couple times a day. And all it said was, here are the customers who did not get their orders. That's the gist of it, boil it down. And at the end of the day, it's customer satisfaction, it's shipping. Okay, so then they get this Excel spreadsheet. They've got to figure out, okay, who, where, when, how, what to do. Versus most of these guys, again, are working in Microsoft applications or doing other work. Again, an alert is triggered and it says, okay, Mr. X has not received his desk. Mr. X is, this is the second time it's happened this year, and he's a platinum customer. Okay. What do you do? Well, again, without having to break any sweat, it's right there. Okay, contact the customer success manager so he can give the guy a call. Send him a note that you're on it. Email generator right away. Contact shipping to find out where it is. These are the type of things that you can determine and have, and that's the concept, guys, of infusing analytics within your organization to create value. So just to recap, you can sell it to sell data sets. You can solutionize it, which we've been doing for years. It's just creating an application, a package of reports, that capability, analytical capabilities, and sell it as a standalone. You can embed it within your own platform, your own portal, your own solutions, where you can open up your business to the people that you work with to give them that that customizable experience into their own book of business, and it's chargeable to a certain degree, and then infuse it within your organization. There is a bunch of, I think there's a white paper we did on monetizing data, which goes into much more detail. If you want, again, I put into the chat my email address at the beginning. You can just email me or Mira or Marcus, and we'll be able to get that to you. So when we talk about coming down the home stretch here before we're going to questions, it's possible to do all those things with the right platform, right? So, I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about a modern platform, a next generation platform. There's several out there. I just use this one as an example, right? But when you want to be able to do the things I just showed you, whether it's infuse, embed, this is what you need to have. You need to have some sort of next generation platform. And there's characteristics of a next generation platform. One is it's got to be able to connect to anything, right? It's born on the cloud, right? Using APIs, it should have 5, 6, 700 API connectors. It should be able to use C data to connect, to create new ones, right? We're talking about creating to our beloved spreadsheets, right? That every organization has. Web applications that I mentioned, Slack and Google, your AWS, your Snowflake, your Azure, your Alibaba, and also your relational database. You should be able to connect to anything. And you should be able to do either live queries and run billions and billions and billions of rows of data worth of, to analyze billions and billions and billions of rows of data in seconds, right? That's the capability of a modern platform. Or bring it into a cache, right? Where you can actually further interrogate and manipulate the data, right? Again, options, flexibility. When you look at how you infuse, which is the next step, it's I have here code free to code first. And I always say no code, low code, or code first, right? So you have those options. We talked about data literacy. We talked about people not necessarily needing to know how to script or program. They just want to be able to go in and drive the insights. Type in, hey, how many trucks delivered the shipments on time in Sydney yesterday, and come up and again using that machine language and AI, come up with the right responses, things that are found in their data that's not necessarily defined within a data set, right? So going beyond that constraint that we used to have in the old desktop type technology, right? I've worked with some CPOs who said, chief product officers say, listen, I know a little bit of scripting. Years ago, I used to be pretty good at doing all this stuff. And I can write some basic SQL scripts to, again, enhance what I'm trying to do, the questions and whatnot that I'm trying to find, or the answers I'm trying to find from the questions. And then some organizations have development teams, right? And the development teams aren't going to go away. They just want to be able to, again, create fancier, more important visualizations to get the answers that they're looking for using Jupyter notebooks, R, Python, etc., right? So just imagine with the AI, NLQ, ML out of the box, all that built in. And then you look at, again, future-proofing your organization. And a lot of companies say, look, we're still in the reporting phase. We want to, we want to be able to connect, get the single source of truth and be able to get better insights. Yes. And now we want to be able to infuse them, maybe not today, but within the next 3 years. And we want to be able to do it in the same platform. We don't want to keep on going out and buying new licenses and having multiple vendors. It should be all in one, right? And those examples I gave you around Google Ads and, the drone campaign and the office supplier, those are real examples of using, analytics at the point of decision making. It's going beyond dashboards, right? That's where people are going. And if you can get beyond the dashboards, you can extract better value and then you can monetize and unlock value. People say we're drowning in data, but we're starving for insights, right? Hopefully, you'll be able to take a look at your strategy. You'll be able to take a look at your business models and see what's right for you. So with that, that's a bit of a long ramble on monetization of data, but we'll open it up to the floor now, see if there's any questions. Okay, I think there's...
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so
thank you so much, Rohan. This is a very, very insightful overview. I actually triggered some questions with me as well, but I think I'm going to let first some of the audience questions to be answered. I've seen a couple drip in along the way. Let me get started with one question from one of the participants. Let me project that. And the question here is, how can ROI be optimized? If I think back like your presentation, I think you had a slide that said something around the limits.
Right at the beginning, we talked about the ROI, this one.
Yes, I think that is what this person is referring to.
Yeah, it's a great question, right? How do we get better at our investments and get that ROI? And I've been on a few panel discussions recently across Australia, talking to CDOs, etc. And their advice. So this is actual practitioners as well, is make sure it's related to a business problem and an outcome, right? You can't get C-suite buy-in if you're trying to boil the ocean. Start small. Start with something that's meaningful, and make sure that you're tracking and communicating with everybody, both the pre and the post results. But it's really start small, always be focused on a business problem that you can sit down with your C-level afterwards and say, listen, this is the problem we had, and here's what we've done to solve it. Where I think a lot of projects get off kilter is when they try to do way too much and they don't have that buy-in, right? The second thing is you've got to make sure that you're not just replacing bad technology with bad technology, right? Get the users. We talked about adoption of analytics being a key driver or key inhibitor of ROI. So what's out there that helps people get their jobs done? I'll give you one example, and then we'll go on, John Willem. I was working with some childcare providers, one of the largest childcare providers in Australia, and the chief data officer was saying, "Hey, the people that use our dashboards or our software, our solution is our childcares, right? They're not data professionals. They're not going to log on to a dashboard and try to do anything more. They just want to get answers so that they can take care of the children. Inventory guys, another one in Australia, a large bulk chain. Everybody would know it if I mentioned it. They've got offices and distribution centers all over Australia. The guys that work there, are driving forklifts and they're doing the packing and shipping, and they have to do the reports. Again, that's the least thing that's important to them. That's something that they have to. So again, to get ROI optimized, make sure it's relevant to the business. Start small, communicate the results, and make sure you get the buy-in from the users.
Absolutely, I think that's a very valid point. I think that we sometimes tend to forget who the audience is of specific solutions, and I think your examples about indeed people who are either in the field taking care of children or who are driving around, they don't care around what kind of algorithm is powering this. And I also like that what you said in the example of Netflix on this slide is it is ultimately providing the right data at the right moment.
When you have, this is big data days, right? Enterprise big data framework, it's for data people. And so we talk to ourselves and we forget who the real audience is, right? And so very telling, 70% of people don't use analytics within an organization, even though we keep on buying them dashboards.
Yeah, very good. Right. We have time for some more questions. So the next question is coming from William. And the question is, can you explain more what cognitive analytics is?
Okay, so again, when you get into AI and ML and NLQ, and everybody has their own definitions of what these all are. When I look at within analytics today, and whether you're using the Netflix analogy or you know any sort of real life experience, it's being able to have that degree of predictive analytics. So, whether forget about the algorithms, but, providing those scenarios, providing the extrapolation of data. So you've got the data points, and can you extrapolate with a high degree of predictability what the outcome will be, right? With machine learning, it gets smarter and smarter and smarter and smarter, right? So the cognitive piece there is when I use that example of how many of our trucks delivered their shipments on time today. You might type that in, and the system will come back and they'll say, okay, well, we think you meant X. Is that right? Yes or no? And you correct it. Okay, we think we're getting closer and closer, and you refine, you give it feedback, and it learns, right? And that's what machine learning is all about. So that cognitive, and so the next time you go in there and you ask these questions, it's right there, a high degree of predictability. That's what we're talking about. So cognitive analytics is really behind the scenes, the smarts that are looking and parsing through your data faster than you ever could, looking for those insights. I know it's a bit vague, William, but at the end of the day, this stuff should just be built in. And when we look at our human lives, we don't really care. And I'm almost going to say something provocative and saying in their business lives, the users don't really mind, or they're not too worried.
That's a very good point. Um, the kind of good thing about being a moderator is that I also get to ask some questions. One of the things that really triggered me was when one of your last slides, you at kind of the center had, I think it was called elastic data as kind of the main part of your platform. And I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more. Yeah, here I saw the elastic data engine, and I've seen a lot of data engines in my life, so I was kind of thinking, are you referring to kind of like an elastic stack data engine, or is it a product? Or can you
Yeah,
explain a little bit more around what you mean with that?
so cubes are within data world. Cubes are kind of like a dirty word, right? It's like we've got more cubes, we're building more cubes. So it is the ability to bring data into a data store. It's a cache, basically, right?
Okay.
But being able to interrogate that data and build models, so you can have your standalone model, but you can bring in, as I mentioned before, using Jupyter notebooks, any sort of visualization that you've created, or you can interrogate the data. If you're bringing in social media data, so unstructured data, into some sort of data engine, it's a different sort of way of storing it and being able to parse it and address it, right? So it's not just structured data, and it's not just the old cubes, but in a sense, when I show you here that we connect, or a platform should connect to AWS or Snowflake, Azure, or Alibaba, some sort of data warehouse, you want to make sure that you have that single source of truth, and that what you're bringing into your data engine is the data that you're analyzing, not the data that you're storing. And
Okay.
that's very important. Yeah.
So it's not the elastic stack, kind of the software suite. And
No, no, no. It's just something that can scale. Put it that way.
okay.
We've got organizations that billions and billions, 10 billions rows of data, and they can analyze very, very quickly, but it's not stored there. It's just analyzed there.
Good. That kind of answers my question as well. I think this was a very, very insightful presentation. You're obviously a very seasoned presenter with a lot of experience in this. And I found this a very useful oversight on how we could monetize data and make the right decisions at the right moment. So before we say goodbye and thank you for being part of Big Data Days, I would like to share two slides with everyone in the audience today, because today is the kickoff of the program. And after this, we're going to get started with two more tracks. So every hour, you will need to make a choice. So in exactly 15 minutes from now, people will need to decide whether they're going to be looking at another presenter from Australia. One of the person that I've had the pleasure of meeting a couple of times, his name is Eric Nguyen. He's a senior manager at Synergy Group in Australia, also will be presenting from Australia. And he's going to be hosting a session within the business track about using data for post-COVID recovery. So this is promising to be an absolutely very interesting one. For those of you who are a little bit more into the technology corner, we also have one session which is a little bit more technical, and we're going to be hearing from Joseph Corto Diaz, who's the founder at Athena Core, and he's going to be talking about how AI creates and maintains inequalities. And I'm pretty sure that that will go into a discussion around ethics really quickly. So those are the two upcoming sessions that will be coming up during Big Data Days. So before I close the session today, I would once more like to ask everyone to put their hands together for Mr. Rohan for this very, very insightful session. It's been a real pleasure to have you on Big Data Days, and thank you so much for being a part of our program this year.
Oh, my pleasure. And for anybody who's in Singapore, I am traveling to Singapore next week. If you'd like to catch up and have a further conversation, my email's at the start of the chat. Thank you very much, John Willem, for having me. Cheers.